Good morning. We're here in Cappadocia and we got up early to see the balloons rising. At first there was only like two balloons going over the valley. So Boyana had the idea that we could maybe go up there after all instead of just staying at our hotel. Yeah, but it looks a little bit sketchy, our shortcut. But let's try. Whoa, okay, we were definitely on the wrong place. It was maybe stupid to climb that place, but wow, at least it was worth it.
Of course, we were eager to ride one of those balloons ourselves, but before we get to that, I wanted to mention that before coming to Cappadocia, we spent a few days at the beach in Antalya, enjoying the last hot days of the season at the end of October. I didn't feel like making a separate video out of it, so I made this short montage. Now let's get back to Cappadocia, where we were picked up for the balloon ride before sunrise of our last day. After a short breakfast, we were brought to the starting point of our ride in the southeast of Göreme. Before we could take off, we watched the balloons get filled with air from huge fans, which was then heated with the balloon's own propane burners. When taking off, the balloon first started floating in place and scraped on the ground a couple of times when caught by the wind, before it could gain some height. Soon after takeoff, we passed by the Göreme Open Air Museum on our ride, which we visited on our first day in Cappadocia.
We are here at the Göreme Open Air Museum. This used to be a monastery that was built around 400 after Christ.
Besides balloons, Cappadocia is famous for its unique geology. The soft rock out of volcanic ashes deposited here over millions of years has led to the iconic rock formations known as fairy chimneys. It also made it very easy for its inhabitants to carve a sheerly endless number of caves into the valleys and hills. While some caves date back to the Hittites in the Bronze Age, the caves in the Göreme Valley were built by early Christians starting in the 4th century AD as a place for religious teachings under Saint Basil, the Bishop of Kayseri. Soon after, we passed over the ranch where we had started the horse riding tour on our second day. Although Cappadocia does not mean land of beautiful horses, as it is often claimed, horses have been an important part of the region's economy for millennia.
Thanks for taking me.
Earlier that day, we also visited 3 more sites further to the north: the Fairy Chimney Valley, the Zelve Open Air Museum, and the Imagination Valley.
So we're here in the Valley of the Fairy Chimneys. This whole Cappadocia region was created by 3 volcanoes which were erupting over a time span of 10 million years. And this created 2 different types of stone. The white part is very soft, and this is ashes that were created by the volcano. And this erodes very quickly with rain and wind. The black part is lava, and this stuff is much harder. The hard lava protects the soft stone underneath it, but it's eroded from the sides, which creates those chimneys after a while. We are now in the Zelve Open Air Museum, and it's actually a lot bigger than the Göreme Open Air Museum. While the Göreme Open Air Museum used to be a monastery, this was actually more like a village where Christians and Muslims used to live together. Hello. It was inhabited until 1952, so around 60 years ago. Then everyone left the village because the erosion was just too strong and there was a high danger of rocks falling onto people. They call this the Imagination Valley because these rock formations look like really many different things. We saw the camel, and this one, for example, looks like...
That's a...
You know what these remind me of a bit? In Bolivia,
Yeah,
on the last day of the tour.
yeah. The ride was very comfortable and nice. The landing was a bit shaky, but our balloon was the last one flying, I think. We really flew long and far.
Sadly, I think the battery went out before the landing. It was pretty rough. We were scraping the floor.
45 degrees above.
But it was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
On our second to last day, we took a trip to the Kaymakli and Derinkuyu underground cities, two of the biggest of over 200 such cave systems in the area, and the Ilara Valley, a picturesque evergreen canyon with hexagonal volcanic rock formations. We're now in the Kaymakli underground city, and the city was first built by the Hittites around 1800 to 800 before Christ. These cities were built for protection against the enemies that were passing through up on the ground. So whenever there was war outside, they would come down here and hide here. At first, it had 2 floors when the Hittites were here, but then later the Hittites abandoned this place, and around 200 after Christ, Christians started discovering these caves and started living here. Over the next millennium, the Christians built another, I think, 6 floors to make a total of 8 floors. And they would usually be living up on the ground, but then whenever enemy armies would pass through, they would go down here and they'd have a lot of food stored for up to 6 months, and then around 5,000 people would take shelter in these caves.
So we hired a local guide inside the caves, and he gave us a really good tour. And we were also really lucky that we arrived just before the crowds. So during our tour, we were really the only ones in those caves.
We then also visited the Derinkuyu underground city, which is even bigger, once sheltering about 20,000 people. However, it also had more tourists and the light was not as good for videos.
After our visit to the underground cities, we're now ending our day with a nice hike in the Ilara Valley. This valley is full of volcanic rock formations.
It's like Iceland. You remember?
And of course, like everywhere in the region, there's lots of caves in the mountainsides. Actually, there's over 100 churches in this maybe 10-kilometer long valley.
Finally, on our fourth and last day after the balloon ride and before going to the airport, we visited the Uchisar and Ortahisar Castle Mountains. These are large freestanding rocks riddled with caves and tunnels, which, similarly to the underground cities, once were used as refuges for surrounding villages. Nowadays, erosion and earthquakes have exposed many of the rooms that were formerly hidden. On the lookout for a good viewpoint for the castle, we met two friendly locals who were also enjoying the view and offered us some homemade wine and snacks. While the distinctive shape of the Uchisar castle is visible from a large part of Cappadocia, the climb to the top of the Ortahisar castle is much more interesting. That's it for this video, thanks for watching, and I wouldn't be a proper YouTuber if I wouldn't ask you to like and subscribe so you can get notified when I upload the next video, maybe a year or two from now.